the #1 branders in the universe. We have to be able to tell our own stories.
Akon Thiam, St. Louis, Missouri, born April 16, 1973, active since 1996. Few artists in the mid-2000s dominated the charts like Akon. His voice was instantly recognizable, cutting through every track with a smooth, melodic tone that carried equal parts pain and celebration. Whether it was singing about struggle on Locked Up, lavish nightlife on I Wanna Love You, or heartbreak on Don't Matter, Akon had an unmatched ability to craft music that resonated across cultures. His sound blended hip-hop, R&B, reggae, and pop in a way no one else had done before, and for a moment he felt unstoppable. His debut album Trouble in 2004 was a commercial and cultural phenomenon, launching him into stardom with hits that still hold weight decades later. Then came Convicted in 2006, a juggernaut that solidified his place among the biggest artists of his time, earning multiple platinum plaques and giving him collaborations with Eminem and Snoop Dogg. The album had a sound that appealed to both radio audiences and the streets, making Akon one of the most well-rounded artists in music. By the time Freedom came in 2008, his influence stretched far beyond just his own music. He had built a powerful brand, introduced his Convict music label, and signed artists like T-Pain and a young Lady Gaga, both of whom would become industry giants in their own right. Akon's presence was everywhere, whether through his own songs or the countless features he contributed to across multiple genres. His voice became a symbol of an era, seamlessly blending with hip-hop, pop, and dance music in ways few others could. But just as quickly as he rose, Akon's presence in mainstream music faded. His name, once attached to hit after hit, slowly disappeared from the charts. The artist who had once been inescapable on radio was now a footnote in conversations about mid-2000s music dominance. Unlike many who fall victim to industry politics, controversy, or declining talent, Akon had no clear downfall. Instead, it was a slow, almost deliberate fade, one that seemed to be a choice rather than a consequence. For an artist with all the tools to last, his career as a top-tier hitmaker was shockingly brief. What seemed like a start to a long reign turned into one of the most abrupt exits in music history, leaving fans wondering why an artist with so much momentum simply walked away. What happened? Let's talk about it. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth Music. Let's get it. Take a minute to like, subscribe, and comment on who I should do next. Akon is a singer, songwriter, and rapper born in St. Louis, Missouri, spending time in New Jersey and his home country. Music ran in his blood. His father was a jazz musician, exposing him to various sounds early on. But Akon's upbringing wasn't just about music. He often spoke about his run-ins with the law, particularly his time in jail, which later became the inspiration for his breakout single Locked Up. His first album, Trouble in 2004, introduced a unique blend of hip-hop and R&B with African and Caribbean influences. Songs like Lonely and Belly Dancer showed his versatility, making him one of the most exciting new voices in music. But it was Convicted in 2006 that turned him into a global star. The album sold over 3 million copies in the US alone, with massive hits like Smack That featuring Eminem and I Wanna Love You with Snoop Dogg. By 2008, he had expanded beyond music, launching Convict music and discovering talents like T-Pain and Lady Gaga, both of whom revolutionized their respective genres. Despite his dominance, his time in the mainstream was brief as mentioned, and soon Akon's presence in music started fading. Stunt number 1, the shift from music to business. At his peak, Akon had something most artists dream of: relevance, longevity, potential, and the ability to cross into multiple genres effortlessly. Instead of capitalizing on this momentum, he made a drastic pivot, shifting his focus away from music and into the world of business. While it's common for artists to venture into entrepreneurship, few have abandoned music as completely as Akon did. His business ventures weren't small-time side projects, they were large-scale initiatives that required his full attention. One of his biggest moves was Akon Lighting Africa, a project launched in 2014 to provide solar energy to rural areas across Africa. It was an ambitious and impactful initiative, reportedly bringing electricity to over 80 million people. For an artist whose music had global reach, this project seemed like an extension of his influence, but it also marked the beginning of his disappearance from the industry. Akon then took his vision even further, introducing Akon, a cryptocurrency designed to stimulate African economies. His most ambitious project yet, Akon City, was pitched as a futuristic metropolis in Senegal that would be powered entirely by his digital currency. The idea drew comparisons to Wakanda from Black Panther, a city that would be self-sustaining and technologically advanced. While these ventures received media coverage, they also distanced him further from music. Unlike artists who balance both worlds, Akon's shift was almost absolute. Between 2008 and 2019, he released no official albums despite teasing multiple projects. His long-promised album Stadium never materialized, and when he finally returned with El Negrito and Akonda in 2019, his musical relevance had long faded. Fans had moved on, the industry had changed, and Akon's name was no longer a major force. While his transition into business was financially rewarding and made a real impact, it came at a major cost. His dominance as a music artist was never the same. Stunt number 2, elevating others while neglecting himself. At his peak, Akon wasn't just a superstar, he was a kingmaker. His eye for talent led to some of the biggest careers in music, but in the process, he shifted his focus so much that he unknowingly pushed himself out the spotlight. One of his greatest discoveries was T-Pain, an artist who would go on to define an entire era of music with his auto-tune heavy sound. Akon signed him to Convict Music, giving him the platform to release Rapper-Turned-Singer in 2005 and Epiphany in 2007, both of which turned T-Pain into a household name. By 2008, T-Pain was dominating radio, featuring on nearly every major song and winning a Grammy. While Akon benefited from his success, T-Pain's rise made Akon's presence less necessary, fans gravitating toward the newer sound, and Akon's own music took a back seat. But the biggest shift came when Akon signed Lady Gaga. In 2007, he helped her get a deal with Interscope through his Con Live imprint, and within 2 years, she became the biggest pop star in the world. Her debut album, The Fame, in 2008 shattered records, and by the time The Fame Monster in 2009 dropped, Gaga had completely taken over pop culture. Akon once admitted in an interview that he stopped making music because Gaga was making him so much money that he didn't need to. This proved to be a major turning point. While T-Pain had reshaped R&B, Lady Gaga had did the same with pop, and Akon, instead of adapting and evolving with them, faded into the background. Unlike moguls like Diddy or Jay-Z who built their artists while keeping their own names relevant, Akon essentially sacrificed his career in favor of developing others. By the time he tried to return, the industry had moved on, and his name no longer carried the same weight. Stunt number 3, aging out of his target demographic. Akon's music thrived in an era where hip-hop, R&B, and pop closely intertwined. His ability to blend these sounds made him a dominant force from 2004 to 2008, but as music evolved, his style began to feel dated. Unlike artists who adapted to new waves, Akon remained tied to a sound that eventually lost its edge. His biggest hits were built around melodic hooks, smooth vocals, and mid-tempo beats that worked perfectly in the club and on radio. But by the early 2010s, the industry had shifted. The rise of electronic dance music, or EDM, changed the pop landscape while hip-hop became darker and more trap-influenced. R&B, once dominated by voices like Akon's, took a backseat to rap song melodies popularized by artists like Drake, Future, and Travis Scott. Akon's once unique sound was no longer in demand. Adding to this, Akon's image had been crafted around nightlife, relationships, and street experiences, subjects that resonated with a younger audience. But as time passed, the next generation of listeners gravitated toward newer artists, and Akon's core fan base aged out of the mainstream. Unlike Jay-Z, who transitioned into an elder statesman of hip-hop, or Usher, who adjusted to newer R&B trends, Akon struggled to reinvent himself in a way that made sense for the changing industry. He attempted to make a comeback multiple times, but the gap between his peak and his return was too wide. Albums like El Negrito in 2019 and Akonda in the same year felt like experiments rather than reinventions, and they failed to bring him back into the mainstream conversations. By the time Akon realized he needed to evolve, music had already left him behind, and his place in the culture was no longer relevant. All in all, Akon's career wasn't lost to scandal, controversy, or a lack of talent. It was lost to neglect. At a time when he could have solidified himself as one of music's most enduring figures, he shifted his focus elsewhere. His transition into business was admirable, but it pulled him away from the one thing that made him a global star. He built careers for others while letting his own fade, and when the industry changed, he failed to evolve with it. Unlike artists that were fighting to stay relevant, Akon seemingly let go willingly, choosing financial success over music longevity. While his contributions to music will never be forgotten, his decline was more fast than it should have been. For someone with his talent, influence, and reach, his exit from the mainstream came far too soon. The question remains, if he stayed locked in, how much greater could Akon's legacy have been? He was a great artist, but for these reasons, musically, his growth was stunted. Salute, much respect. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth Music, and I'm out.